Hey YouTube, welcome back to another deck profile. Today we're going to be featuring our Water Arisana Mill/Stratagem deck. I took this to a 4th place finish at the most recent Ascent Santa Clara, where it actually ended up winning the event as well, piloted by one of the main deck guys. There were a couple of competitive teams that showed up with this deck, and it ended up doing pretty well overall into the tournament. A lot of them entered into day 2. It had a pretty good conversion rate. And we're here to explain this brand new deck that seemingly popped up out of nowhere. However, I am going to self-plug a little bit. If you want to go check out our Patreon linked down below, this deck list was actually on our Patreon a month or 2 ago, something like that. So Patreon members did have a pretty big head start compared to your average player on the meta because we had shared this exclusive deck tech with them. So this is obviously our most updated version. We'll go into a little bit different of combos and strategies here, but I would even recommend going and checking out that Patreon video. It does still have some very relevant tips and tricks. So anyways, let's go ahead and move on to the material deck. We have Spirit of Water. So we are only running one Spirit. We can't play Serene because we don't have the Nico bonus of running water as a Nico. We can't lose our our ability to cast water. So we are just on normal Spirit of Water. We don't run the Arisana level 2, so we can't really run the Fragmented Spirit. It's going to be way too hard to recover that card back. And I value the space in the material deck a little bit too much. So we are on Arisana level 1. This is our only other champion outside of our Spirit. Basically, you just really want to get that class bonus of Cleric. This card unlocks so many cards in our deck, and also Gathering Twice is really nice. It helps you filter to find your win condition. It helps you recover a little bit to live a little bit longer. We are basically a control deck, and then if you roll a level 1, hope that you draw Fracturize that you don't care about, so you can Fracturize it and gain a card basically. We are also on Tideholder Claymore. So this was a card that we very frequently were moving in and out of the main, putting it into the side, sometimes even cutting it. But this card is absolutely insane. I would not run this deck without it. I really, really loved this card. It can get shut off by Lantern, so that's something to keep in mind. But this can basically just materialize you 15 damage for free. Well, not free, but if you're not going to use the floating memory, then it's free. So card is just absolutely nuts though. We have Scepter of Lumina. This is just going to get better and better as more people are picking up water. Water seems to be finding its way in the meta really strong. And in the mirror, you're going to be very, very happy to have this. Don't forget that if you Tideholder Claymore, if you Icebound Slam on turn 1 against a water deck and you melee your floating, don't just pass even though all your cards are down. You can bring this out in your main phase against that water deck and use one of those floatings that you just milled, especially if you have another floating in there to go into your level 1 right away. That can be a very, very strong opening that can sometimes be impossible to come back from. So Scepter's insane. It's not really meant to be in here as a deal 4 damage to your opponent card. This is mainly in here as a, hey, I have too much floating that I don't have a use for. I'm playing this defensive deck, so I have the cards in hand pre-recollection. I can just bring this out, pay 5, draw 2 cards. It's busted, right? Then we have Crystalline Mirror. Nullifying Lantern is this deck's worst enemy. We do rely on cards being counted as water element cards in our graveyard. So Crystalline Mirror is one of the reasons to run Arisana, because it has a built-in Nullifying Lantern destroy card. So as long as you have enough Phantasias, which is pretty easy with the deck that we run, you can bring this out and pop your opponent's Nullifying Mirror. Then we also have Polaris, another reason to be running Arisana. This card can be activated in your main deck, just similar to how Scepter of Lumina can be. And this is 3 cards in 1 basically. This is a board wipe. This is a free materialization, like if you need to get it out and like Fracturize it or something like that. And then it can also be a anti-mill card. So specifically in the mirror match, you can wait on bringing this out so your opponent can't Fracturize it. And then when your opponent goes for the mill out, you can hard materialize it in your materialization phase. Don't use the effect to bring it out hindered. And then you just crack it after cracking any herbs that you have. You shuffle the Cosmic Bolts into your deck, and then that way when you go to draw after your opponent milled you out completely, you don't lose the game. So we did actually bring Cosmic Bolts with us to this event as generated cards, even though we couldn't physically cast them. We don't run the Arisana level 3. We can't play Astra cards, but it's an anti-mill tech. So this card comes up in different ways in different matchups, and it's really important that you learn how to utilize that card correctly. We're on Ingredient Pouch. This is because we're not on level 2. So Ingredient Pouch is going to allow us to get that 3 damage benchmark with Polaris. So Arizona level 1 comes out, you gather twice, you have 2 herbs, you can get 2 counters on Polaris, which can deal 2 damage to the board. Usually not enough to kill something like a Wind Allies deck board, right? So you go Ingredient Pouch as well. That can immediately be used to gather, and then you have 3 things that you can use, 3 damage that can be done to the board. Usually good enough, and also if you're just in a grindy game, Ingredient Pouch can be really good. I brought this out against a Slimes player and got like, we ended up just in this like super mega control kind of board state that I was in control of for like an hour-long game 1. And I used Ingredient Pouch over and over and over and over again, got a bunch of filters, got a bunch of heals, felt very, very good. Then we have Backup Charger. We are at a level 1 deck, so we have more space in our material decks. We're not going up to level 2, level 3, and we also really want to hold a really high influence in this deck. Again, we're a control deck at the end of the day, and so Backup Charger's fantastic. It's so good in water too, because you get that free power cell. We actually can use that power cell to bump up one of our automatons in the deck, but you can also fracturize it, which is a very, very common opening play. So this deck has a lot of opening plays, which is really nice, which is why I went with that draw 7 Water Spirit instead of the Glimpse Spirit. I think there's enough cards that you can draw for an opening play to warrant just getting that extra card all the time. We also have GCR, enough said. We have Terraforming. You know, allies can be a little bit rough, and this can also let you build up more. You know, if you have to try to clear off 4 health allies, you're worried that your opponent's going to favorable wins and stuff, you can go Terraforming after you bring out the Ingredient Pouch, and you can just keep on like delaying a little bit and everything. So you can try to like just build up this awkward game state where your opponent can't really do much, and then they're just going to get board wiped if they do anything. We also have Safeguard Amulet, just a good defensive card. Again, we're a control deck, so we want to have these defensive options. Then we have Nullifying Mirror. This is basically the only way you'll ever win against Razorgale Kongming. We were struggling with that matchup a lot until I literally just started to bring out Nullifying Mirror as my first materialization, no matter what, against that deck, and just getting it on the board right away let me race them way better. So Nullifying Mirror, very, very, very helpful. All right, before we go on to the main deck, I just want to plug a couple other things. We do have our Michigan Regionals coming out soon, January 11th. You can find ticket links in the description below. It's going to be hosted in Ann Arbor, Michigan at Upkeep Games. We've done 4 seasons, I think now, and every single season our tournaments keep getting bigger and bigger, so please come out. I want to keep hopefully growing this scene. A lot of people always seem to like the Michigan Regionals. We try to do our best running it quickly, on time, good judging, and tons of giveaway. Also, true champion Eli will be giving away an air fryer to first place of Michigan Regionals, so it's going to be an epic event. Make sure you guys come out. Also, I want to thank our 2 sponsors. We have dragonshield.com. You can use code TRUE5, or if you use the link in the description below, we actually get a bigger kickback. But either way, if you use our code or our link, you will get 5% off at Dragon Shield. So everybody wins. You guys get to help support us. You guys get a little discount as well. It's perfect. We love Dragon Shield. Thank you guys so much. We also have a brand new sponsor. So Perfect Fit TCG. Again, the link will be to their website below, but you can use code TRUE5, same code that you use for Dragon Shield, and get 5% off their entire website. They have a ton of goodies over there, including pretty much every set of Grand Archive, including the HVN new set pre-orders, as well as ALC Altar pre-orders over there. Or if you're a new player, you want some old sets, you need some DOA Altar boxes to flesh out your collection, they have Altar boxes over there as well for DOA and a bunch of other sets. So definitely go check them out. Again, you'll save 5% off using our code TRUE5. So thank you guys all so much for the support. It means so much. Let's go ahead and move on to the main deck now. I'm gonna kind of breeze through the first half of the main deck because a lot of this is just our floating memory. So these cards aren't crucial to the game plan. They don't have a huge reason why they're in the deck. They're just the best floating memory options that we could run. And floating memory is a vital part of the strategy. So for Chilling Touch, you can use this to try to like stop your opponents from leveling up and stuff, or just, you know, whatever. It's a useful card, but it's mainly in there because it's a non-class bonus floating memory. Same thing with Refracting Missiles. This card is actually really insane. We do get quite a lot of fractals out sometimes, and especially with things like Forest Cake, now putting a trigger on the stack when your opponent plays like a baby red when they go level 1. You can actually refracting missiles, even if you only have a single Fractal of Rain out, hit that baby red for 2 damage because that cake effect has to go on the stack. And now you've killed their baby red before they could use the on attack. So really, really good stuff here with refracting missiles. I used that card multiple times to hit my opponent's champion for like 4 or 5 damage. I think I got an 8 damage refracting missiles off once in the event. Pretty insane. That card can get out of hand. Fracturize is such a good card. I would be running 8 of this card if I could. The fact that it's a non-class bonus floating memory is fantastic if you mill it, and this is one of your best floating memory cards to draw into your hand. It has so much utility. You can use it on a bunch of your opponent's cards to stop their game plan or cut off their defenses, or you can use it with a lot of your own stuff to gain you extra value. Playing this on something like a level herb token or your power cell or something is essentially giving you the easiest +1 in the game. This is going to your drop for floating memory, which you're going to use as a resource later, and it kept the card in hand by turning an item on your board into a reservable card. So Fracturize is insane. Can't talk enough about it. Then we have Lost in Thought. This card's a little tricky. You can definitely get into these situations where you can banish 5, 6 cards with Lost in Thought, draw a bunch of cards, but then you'll remember you need floating memory in the drop or water cards in the drop to win the game. You don't want to Lost in Thought all your water cards out of your drop and then not be able to mill your opponent out with Penguin Fractal, and you don't want to get all your floating memory out of the drop with Lost in Thought and then realize, oh, I can't actually really cast Stratagem, it's only going to do 6 damage now or something. So be a little careful with this card. Usually when I'm playing Lost in Thought, I'm only actually trying to draw for like 2 or 3, even if I have like 5 floating in the drop. It's just a card that you're going to have to be really careful of compared to other water decks where you might just always use Lost in Thought for max value every time. Then we have Primordial Ritual, not really a card that you want to be playing, honestly. This card is in here because it's a non-class bonus floating memory, but it can come up. You have all of your allies are interceptors in this deck, so it's really nice to leave an ally up with interception, force your opponent to attack into it, and then right before it dies, you know, like on their 3rd ally swing into it or something, Primordial Ritual it away and get a ton of value. But don't get baited by this. This isn't necessarily like the card that you want to be playing. Again, a lot of these floating memory cards are in here just because they have floating memory. Then we have 4 Awakened Deacon. This card is, again, another fantastic reason to be running Arisana. So this is a class bonus floating, which is a little unfortunate, but it is a 2-drop 1/3, which is standard stats in Grand Archive with some really insane effects. The fact that it has floating as a 2-drop 1/3 is pretty decent, but it can also gain intercept as long as you have enough Fantasias out. So a 2-drop 1/3 intercept with floating is absolutely insane. We've seen how good Swift Recruit is, we've seen how good Stalwart Shieldmate is. This card's a little different than those, but honestly, almost feels better in this deck specifically. So, and also this is an automaton. So if you watch my top 8 match that got streamed, you'll see me use my Power Cell with Awakened Deacon both games to do absolutely insane value, huge tempo plays, just a fantastic, fantastic card. Then we also have Water Barrier. This is in here as a 4X because, again, we need the floating memory count, but this is really insane against some specific decks. If your opponent is going with like a crazy big Jin swing that's not unpreventable, you can do Water Barrier, take 1 damage. If your opponent's trying to do a Storm Slime for 11 damage, bam, Water Barrier, take 1 damage. It can obviously be played around with, your opponent can figure out a way to get around this card, but it can come up, and it's just so versatile and useful in so many different matches. I even use this against Fiza when they try to do a huge Heated Vengeance swing for like 7 or 8 damage. I just said, okay, Water Barrier, take 1. Really, really crazy card, and class bonus floating. That's mainly why we run it. Okay, that's all the bad floating memory cards out here. Let's talk about why this deck's actually good. So one of our openers is Fractal of Rain. You know, if you've been around GA for a little bit, you know what this card does. It's going to mill you 1 every single turn, but it's also going to be able to be used to cast things from hand. So you don't lose a card from hand by playing it, really. And it's going to give you that continuous value. And we have 28 floating memory in this deck. So basically 50% of the time that you're milling a card, it should be floating memory. That's going to convert into damage, it's going to convert into card draw, it's going to convert into basically anything that's going to help you win the game. And so Fractal of Rain's really, really good. Definitely one of the cards that you want to see on your first turn. Then we have Icebound Slam. This card is insane. It's kind of a problem, honestly. I think Icebound Slam is something to be feared, and I think that people are going to have to respect this. Icebound Slam is going to be a card that we're going to be covering in our Patreon Let's Talk About It series. It's a weekly series that we do where we spend just 5 or 10 minutes, keep it short form content, but we talk about a card that's doing really well in the meta or is underlooked in the meta and what you can do, how you can take advantage of it or how you can play against it. And Icebound Slam is going to be one of the cards that we're talking about. How can you actually stop your opponent from getting all the value from Icebound Slam? And there is a couple ways, so definitely make sure to go check out our Patreon. We have that free trial, or if you're already a Patreon member, thank you for the support and get ready to learn how to make these Icebound Slam losers cry. All right, next up, again, another win con is Stratagem of Myriad Ice. So when we first built this deck, we actually only had 3 of these in here. We were really leaning into the mill package when we first built the deck. It was a little bit of a different format and it just made a little bit more sense. But in this format, Stratagem is nuts. So if you open up Icebound Slam Stratagem, you can actually just end games in 5 minutes. If you go watch the finals results of Heinke versus the main deck guy that I'm forgetting his name, I'm so sorry, Mitch, I believe. I think it was Mitch. Sorry if I forgot your name. A lot going on. But yeah, so if you watch that game, Mitch ends up winning that game in like literally 5 minutes. He just goes, you know, there's so much tempo and aggression that you can do. And against a deck like Fire Slimes, which doesn't really have much defense, you can just basically OTK them really fast. So Stratagem is insane. I could talk like 10 minutes about that card, but we're already really long into the deck profile, so I'm not going to cover it too much. But yeah, so we have Fractal of Polar Depths. This is our final win con. So this can mill either player based on the water element cards in your graveyard. So you either play it out and then you play Stratagem using this to pay for Stratagem, then you pop Polar Depths and target yourself. You mill yourself a bunch of cards, and then you finish resolving Stratagem's effect, and now you're gonna have a bunch more floating memory in there to use. So that's one of the classic combos with it. Or if you get like 2 out on the board, usually that means that you're gonna be able to mill your opponent out. You might already have, 15, 20 cards in your graveyard. People draw a lot in Grand Archive. There's a lot of decks that draw a lot right now, and so your opponent might only have 40 cards left in deck, even in like kind of the mid game, early game or something. And then you just go, okay, Fractal of Penguin, Fractal of Polar Depths, mill you twice basically. You can also, if you have like 3 of these out and it's like even really early in the game, you don't have a lot of water, you can go Fractal, mill myself, Fractal, mill you, Fractal, mill you. And you want to always pop them all at once, making sure that you put the targets on the stack, because they will count themselves. Sacrificing this card is a cost, so it'll sacrifice itself, go to the graveyard, and then it will resolve its effect, and it will count itself. So, and if you chain multiple of them all together, every single one will count itself. So you can really actually get some pretty crazy mills pretty fast. Then we have Frostform Paladin. I hate this card. This is my least favorite water card. It's a card that I always try to cut out of every list I build, and then I begrudgingly have to put it in. Card is absolutely insane. I played against Fiza, and as soon as I get like one of these out, basically the game's over with how many different control options you have. It's insane. It helps you close out games. It helps you pressure. It's a stupid good card. I wish it wasn't. Then we have 4 Revitalizing Cleanse. Definitely, I don't think all Arisanas were on this count. We went for a little bit more of a controlling build and inevitable win con. I'm gonna always be able to choose one of my win cons to beat you with, and so I'm just gonna try to focus on surviving and everything. Revitalizing Cleanse is nuts in this deck because every single card is water. That helps your Fractal of Rains be played imbued. It helps your Revitalizing Cleanses hit harder. It helps your Cerulean Decrees get imbued, and also helps you always hit 8 off of Icebound Slam. So the fact that we're on an all-water deck, Revitalizing Cleanse just kind of seems to come in. You can get this shut off by your opponent's Nullifying Mirror, but usually they don't really have the materializations to bring that out. And even if they do bring it out, you're usually holding up a lot of cards anyways. So if they try to materialize it, you can just go, okay, I'll use my Revitalizing Cleanse right now in response to the materialization. And then they kind of waste the materialization. So that's why it doesn't really feel good to materialize that card against this deck. Card's just nuts. Cleanse is gonna keep you alive for a while. Then we have Force Cerulean Decree. This is our only negate in the deck. I know that main deck ran Tidal Locks. I definitely don't disagree with that. Personally, I just like only having the Cerulean Decrees. The reason that I like this card so much is that you draw into memory, you possibly negate something or at least slow your opponent down. You could, -3 attack to be defensive, and then you're putting a water card in the graveyard while also keeping your influence exactly the same because it's drawn into memory. So it's going to help facilitate your Tideholder Reclaimers, your, more importantly, Fractal Polar Depths, and it allows you to get to those win cons while achieving the same amount of influence but slowing the game down with this card. So Cerulean Decree is just absolutely nuts. It can be so useful in this deck. But things like Tidal Lock and Frostspine and all that kind of stuff, definitely good cards as well. And then this card is insane, guys. Torrential Blast. I can't tell you how useful this was during the event. So this was one of the cards that we realized when building this deck way back when we were making the Patreon video and everything. We realized this card is absolutely insane. It's what led us to an almost 100% win rate against Merlin in in-house testing. Being able to just Torrential Blast their Incarnate if they go for that, trying to stop you from strataging them. You just go Blast, mill myself more cards that's going to help my stratagem hit more damage, remove your defensive and offensive threat. Using this against slimes, guys, that is so good. If you can hold this in your hand and wait till your opponent hits level 3, they try to play an Ethereal Slime, you go, okay, Torrential Blast, hit it for 8 damage. Now you don't have that really big body that's always pressuring you that Slimes gets a lot of value out of. And then also the fact that this basically replaces itself. Like I said, we have almost half the deck is floating memory. The fact that this mills yourself 2 cards, you're usually going to hit 1 floating memory off of it, which is basically worth a card. So this is a free removal spell in a way that is also accelerating your win conditions. Card is absolutely insane, and one of the reasons that you sometimes want to kind of like rush the Arisana level 1, even if you don't pay a floating memory from it. Sometimes it's just worth to go pay from memory, go Arisana level 1, get your Polaris on the board hindered, but ready to go in a turn or two, get your Torrential Blast started to go online, and the card's just nuts. So let's go ahead and talk about the side deck. Pretty easy side deck, honestly. We went with the classic all 3 Baubles side deck. So this came up really clutch. I was happy to have all of them there. When you go into 12, 13, 14, however many rounds of an Ascent, you're usually going to play against every single element. We had a good enough Slimes matchup that it felt okay to not really have anything to bring in against Slimes as well. So bringing the Baubles in felt really great. We also ran the Water Bauble because we did worry that there would be some mirrors. We worried about Nico, Sylvie decks. We figured out those would be pretty popular. Even Water Allies was feeling pretty good testing before the event, which I ended up playing in Top Cut. So yeah, we just figured we wanted kind of like the 4 Bauble treatment. It just felt right. And then the clutch card was Conjure Downpour. This is a card that, again, we've been bringing in and out. We even had it in the main for a briefly short time, but mainly was in the sideboard for a while. And yeah, this card was great. Being able to use this against Wind Allies, Water Allies, Fiza, all those kind of decks, and just be like, okay, hey, you're not going to really hit me this turn. I'm going to put a water card in the memory, I'm going to put a water card in the graveyard. I'm going to draw a card in memory, so I didn't actually use a resource. Very similar to like Cerulean Decree kind of vibes. And you're not really going to pressure me. I'm just going to continue to sit here with Ingredient Pouch and make my Polaris bigger and bigger, so it's actually going to completely wipe out your win con eventually. This card was fantastic. You can see me playing this in Game 2 of my streamed top 8 match, and you can see how devastating it was and just how much it let me control that game. So I was really happy with that type of card because in our testing, it did feel like Wind Allies and some other type of decks could sometimes just roll you over if you didn't draw enough defense. So being able to side in some defense felt really great. I will say, guys, this is a incredibly fun deck. And I would definitely go recommend checking out our Patreon. I know this is the 3rd time, 4th time I'm plugging it in the video, but we have that free trial. That's why I feel okay about plugging it. We're not asking you to spend your money with us. We love the support, but definitely go check it out. Use that free trial because we're going to be doing a podcast about this deck, extensive, so you guys can hear even more about the deck than our short deck profile today. I try to keep it short. It's probably going to end up being like 25 minutes. And there's still so much more I could talk about. So yeah, come listen to our podcast. We'll talk about our deck a lot there. We're going to have a Let's Talk About It featuring Icebound Slam. We're going to have a lot of content on there. We have a Fire Luxem Xander in-depth profile coming soon to the Patreon. So that'll be a level 3 and higher content. But our Patreon, our podcast and our Let's Talk About It is at the level 2 or lower tiers. So you can join and listen to all that with the free trial. So guys, thank you so much. Super grateful and excited to have top date another Ascent. It's feeling very unreal at this point. And congrats to the main deck guys and just everyone at the event. It was a super enjoyable event, and really looking forward to the next ones. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.